Well, the Italian government, whoever's in power, has to pass a budget each year, and therefore that would be the moment where you'd see any sort of enactment of their sort of electoral promises. So that's always going to be a moment where things potentially come to a head, I suppose. And clearly this coalition government has an agenda, various agendas, I should say, that they wanted to include in this budget. The leaders of the two parties, Matteo Salvini and Luigi Di Maio, clearly want to show to their supporters, the people that voted them into power, that they will carry out what they promised. And yeah, you know, when they submitted this draft budget plan overnight at the start of this week, you know, I immediately got a response from someone at the Commission saying, no surprise. They weren't in any way expecting them to do anything but try and carry out some of these electoral promises in this budget, which is something that really is their opportunity. Having not passed any real major legislation over the last 6 months, it was their opportunity to make a statement. In terms of the conversations now continuing between the Italians and the Commission, there's another 9 days until the Commission must formally notify Italy that they have a major problem with this budget. Based on the letter that Mr. Moscovici delivered already to the Italians yesterday in Rome, it does seem like there are 4 major areas of concern. Mr. Tria, talking to Mr. Moscovici, seemed to think that things weren't necessarily all finished, though, in terms of the conversations between the two sides. So take a listen to that.
Today we open what we have called a constructive dialogue, starting from differing evaluations on our economic policy. We have acknowledged these different evaluations. We believe we need to give deeper explanations on the grounds of our policy, and we need to explain the structural reform we will carry out with the budget law, and this way we hope to bring our positions close.
Now, these draft budget plans that all EU countries, Eurozone countries I should say, sort of send into the Commission, they all have to include certain forecasts over a 3-year timeline. Forecasts inherently rely on models. One of the criticisms from the Commission is that these growth models in particular have not been endorsed by an independent parliamentary body in Italy, which is something they should be done, and that is a mantra applied to all different Eurozone countries that submit these plans. They've also talked about the massive increase in government spending. That's going to be something tied to that universal basic income in particular, talking about the failure in this budget to try and significantly reduce the debt to GDP ratio, something that again the Italians have signed up to doing, and that all countries that have signed up to the Stability and Growth Pact have consigned themselves to do. They say that's not being done with this budget. Also talking about a planned fiscal expansion. This is where this word unprecedented comes in, that is significantly different to what the EU had previously suggested to Italy.
Thank you. Stay with us, because we're just going to move the story on to Brexit. Sterling has hit a day's high after the EU's chief Brexit negotiator said the EU does not want to impose a hard Brexit on the UK. I find this absolutely extraordinary, Willem, because actually the pound's nowhere near its recent highs. It's still in a very, very tight range. In fact, it seems very well anchored to 130. If Michel Barnier says we don't want to impose a hard Brexit, I don't see how anyone would want to necessarily buy or sell sterling on the back of it. With Michel Barnier saying we've done 90% of the deal, I've heard this, as you have, from a lot of people for a very long time. It's the other 10% we care about, the hard bit, not the easy bit. I don't know if you... Am I missing something subtle here, Willem?
I wouldn't necessarily take a strong stance on that myself, but I would say that, you know, that 90% number has already been floated by the likes of Simon Coveney, the Taoiseach from Ireland, by Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. Previously, Mr. Barnier had talked about an 80 to 85%, so it may be that some of that sterling lift we've seen recently this morning is on the back of that 85 to 90%. But you're right, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't necessarily matter all that much, so long as there is no clear solution to what to do about that border on the island of Ireland. We've heard from Jeremy Hunt in the last few moments, the British Foreign Secretary, talking this morning in an interview, saying himself that, again, he thinks the EU want to help. The EU27 themselves, he says, have been very, very unified, and he wants people to back Theresa May in that same show of unity. And that unification, I've talked about it all of this week, is something we've really seen from European leaders. They say Mr. Barnier is the man, you know, really pushing this forward for us. We don't want to step outside of our lanes. He's the final decider when it comes to the best approach to these negotiations. Whether Theresa May can get that kind of backing from her own cabinet, her own party, let alone the Parliament in Westminster. The fact that she can't seems to be a real problem for the British.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.